It's Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, and you are watching the Daily Rebel News noon live stream. Usually the big boss man himself is here. That would be Ezra Levent, of course, but Ezra is very busy on a very important project. So for the conceivable future, every Tuesday and Thursday, me and my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn-Reid, will be filling in for Ezra as he gets that project done. And, sorry, Sheila, this is the part where you explain to our viewers what exactly it is that we're trying to accomplish here. Okay.
Well, I'm trying to get through the next hour with you without ruining the entire company. But for the viewers at home, what you can do today, and every noon hour in the center of the Universe, Toronto, or 10 a.m. out here in the West, you get a chance to interact with me and David as we interact with each other. We do this thing called a live stream, but within the live stream, we have the ability to accept your super chats. And that'll give you a chance to throw some money in the pot for us, and it'll highlight your comment or question or topic you'd like us to touch on. And it'll pin it to the top, and we'll see it. And if I don't see it, Mr. Producer will send it over to me, and then we'll see it, and David and I will discuss it. But it's a way for you to interact with us, and we get to interact with you, which I like. It's one of those great things about what we do here at Rebel News. We're not, like Rosie Barton holed up in some studio somewhere and scolding people on Twitter for being critical of her. We actually welcome the feedback of our viewers and haters too. But it also helps us pay the bills. Again, unlike CBC, we don't force you to support us. So if you'd like to support us, I know it's a tough time out there for everybody. And I think we do important work here to hold the government to account, especially now, instead of, giving, as Ezra likes to say, the media gives Justin Trudeau a tongue bath. We're doing something entirely different. We're looking at the government critically during this time. And if you'd like to help us, and support us, that's one of the best ways to do it.
And folks, believe me, Sheila and I know that this is maybe one of the worst times in Canadian history to ask for financial donations. I think there are Canadians coast to coast in Canada that are actually going to food banks who never dreamed, maybe even a month ago, that they'd ever be in this position. So if you are in a position to give, we really appreciate it. And if you aren't, we totally understand. And, speaking of, what's going on in Canada, there is a sad shadow over our Dominion today, isn't there, Sheila, in light of the absolute grotesque tragedy that occurred in Nova Scotia on Sunday. It's kind of funny. That's the old adage, isn't it? Be careful what you wish for. I think I and many others were guilty of hoping that something else would come into the news other than the Wuhan virus, something that would knock that off the front page. And wow, like I said, be careful what you wish for, because what we have is at least 19 innocent people dead. And when it comes to analyzing this act of murder, this act of evil, this act of insanity. I'm running out of adjectives, Sheila, to describe what happened, but you just don't know what's in somebody's head, do you? This was an individual, Gabriel Wortman, who seemed to have a thriving business in the dental biz. And, the reports that are coming out is that he had a sad side to him. But those people weighing in said they would never imagine he was capable of that. And you can't dream of what somebody is thinking, can you, Sheila? So my heart just goes out to all the victims and their families. And I think moving forward, we have to be watchful that this is not politicized. And by that I mean, and you see the chatter already with the federal Liberals, that this will be another example held up about onerous gun control laws that are targeting not the maniacs of the world, the Gabriel Wortmans, but people who like to go duck hunting, for example. We saw, remember, in High River in Alberta several years ago, Sheila, that a flood was used for a grotesque and unconstitutional gun grab. What are your thoughts? Do you see this horrible, tragic story being used to further more liberal agenda when it comes to guns.
Yeah. First of all, in Alberta, we've been through a lot. We've had fires, we've had floods, we've had oil price collapses, and I know that we have a lot of friends and supporters who are cheering for us in Nova Scotia. And I do my best to advocate for rural Nova Scotia, especially as they experience terrible things like mill closures and now this. I just sent a picture along to Mr. Producer that I took last night while I was out just sort of driving around, getting out of the house. And in one of the nearby communities where I live, there were Albertans flying Nova Scotia flags outside their homes to show support. Because, like I said, in Alberta, we've been through so much. We know that we have people in Nova Scotia cheering for us. It was kind of nice to see that that camaraderie in these trying times. But yesterday at that press conference where Police Commissioner Brenda Lukey, she would not say if this shooter, had a gun license. And I'm pretty sure if he did, we would have heard about it, because then it would be a reason to say, well, look, licensing doesn't work. Now we have to come confiscate. So I don't think they're going to tell us this. I don't think they're going to tell us that information, because that information would nuke their argument for, I'm sure, the coming gun control legislation involved here. And I think gun control legislation coming out of this is going to distract from the RCMP failures here. And I'm going to say it. There are extreme failures. People are locked up in their homes as sitting ducks right now. And there are 16 different crime scenes related to a 12-hour rampage by this madman over the course of, and it's not isolated to just one area. I mean, these are 16 spread out crime scenes. And yet the RCMP they actively chose not to notify people by using the emergency alert system that would have sent notifications to people's homes to tell them to at least be prepared. Many people didn't even know that this was unfolding until after it was over. A lot of people are coming out and saying, we only found out that it was happening because we found out from friends and family who were posting to social media. We never found out from the police to protect ourselves. And I mean, that is devastating. I think there are a lot of lives that could have been saved. And I think the police are going to come down hard, police, RCMP, I mean, and the Liberals are going to come down hard on law-abiding people, as opposed to a little introspection into how they really dropped the ball here. I brought up there were some police saying that they found that they found that Twitter was the most effective way for them to communicate to the public, as opposed to sending a notification to a device that literally almost every single person in the province has. How many people are on Twitter, as opposed to people who actually have cell phones? If this is not what the emergency alert system was designed for, then why even have it? They sent out the emergency alert system, the province of Nova Scotia, sent out an emergency alert before Easter, reminding people to not go have Easter with their grandparents. If that's what they saw fit to send out an emergency alert for, then they need to answer for why they didn't send one out now.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I remember when the COVID-19 precautions first went into effect, at least here in Ontario, I remember my phone going off a couple of times on the Amber Alert system, warning to basically wash your hands, stay 2 meters away from other individuals. Stuff I knew because it had already been drilled into our heads. I mean, why would that be an alert? And then you contrast it with something like this. The other thing too, another sidebar of this story, Sheila, is the Prime Minister yesterday basically telling the media, and I wonder how many are going to follow suit on this, not to mention the gunman's name in their reporting. I understand what the ostensible reason is. It's if this guy was seeking to become infamous, well, let's deny him that wish in death. But maybe he didn't even care about becoming famous or infamous. Maybe he was just so full of rage. But the point is, the way I look at it, Sheila, is that you can't censor the news like that. You can't censor history. I mean, what are we supposed to do in, when we teach history in the schools? There was this guy, he was in Germany around the late 30s, and he went after a certain group of people. I mean, I think it's preposterous. What are your thoughts on this idea that we are supposed to go to the, the Voldemort method of he whose name we dare not speak?
Honestly, I think it's stupid. This guy, as best we can tell, was not seeking infamy. He didn't post about it to social media. He doesn't, as best I can tell, have a long social media history where he's talking about wearing a police uniform and getting in what looks like a police cruiser and then driving around and killing people. We don't see any of that. So I don't know why we can't mention his name. His name is Gabriel Wortman. Why can't we say his name? Because his name, we should be able to spit it out of our mouth like the poison that it is. And furthermore, since when is Justin Trudeau a mind reader? Justin Trudeau doesn't know why this guy did this. So why is he telling us not to even talk about this? There are a lot of people in media who are going to follow the government's lead and Justin Trudeau's suggestion to censor their own news. But I think people just want the information and they'll decide what's important to them, not Justin Trudeau.
And I think just to put an end to this horrible story, Sheila, the two things that of course stand out to me was the sheer diabolical evil in terms of the preparation, having a car that looked like an RCMP police cruiser, him wearing something that appeared to be a really good facsimile of a RCMP uniform, so that people not just letting their guard down, but would presumably run towards this individual in this cruiser, thinking that this is one of the good guys. And the second thing is, Sheila, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I don't have an understanding of the human brain that people in that profession would have. But what gets me, we've always had a moment, a triggering moment. Typically, if you live in the GTA, it's road rage, where somebody cuts you off and you have to slam on and you go into this rage, and it's almost like a killing rage, but you get over it. Even, this is what I don't get. If he was so bottled up with rage that it included homicide, wouldn't you think the first time, and I can't even imagine doing this even once, but actually shooting a person, killing that person, wouldn't you think that would be the release valve for all that rage to, get out and make him calm down? But that was just the beginning as he went on killing over and over and over again. I just find that fascinating that over so many hours, this guy was so amped up that nothing was going to stop him but a bullet from a cop to him himself.
Yeah, I mean, it is shocking that this rampage continued on for 12 hours. And I keep going back to the fact that when there is a shooting like this going on, and he's dressed like a cop, and he's driving what looks to be a police cruiser, how many people could have benefited from the information of, hey, there's a fake cop going around shooting people. Take precautions if you can. But they didn't know because the government and the police decided that it wasn't the most appropriate use of the emergency alert system to let people know. I mean, it is just shocking. I think this could have ended a lot sooner if people knew what to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, and I think that alone calls out for an inquiry, Sheila. But we mentioned Justin Trudeau's name, and you have a story that you're hot to trot on. It is the Australian story of Justin Trudeau wanting to get right down to business about what exactly?
His thoughts. Socks, his novelty socks. It's in the National Post today. Former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, who I kind of like, I think he's kind of cheeky and funny, has accused Justin Trudeau of humiliating other world leaders during negotiations for a revamped Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal in 2017. Turnbull said he personally felt... I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, because I don't know why Turnbull feels personally let down. It's not like he's a Canadian, but he said he felt personally let down by Trudeau and upbraided him for embarrassing other world leaders when he failed to show up for a critical meeting. I think I did a story on that. Turnbull said he was scheduled by coincidence, poor chap, to meet with Trudeau after the no-show, and the Canadian Prime Minister seemed more interested in talking about his socks than the previous meeting. This is the quote. Justin always wore perfectly tailored suits that fitted like a glove, bright socks, and on occasion two-toned shoes. What do you think of the socks, he asked, crossing his legs as he sat down. Justin, I said, we're not here to talk about your socks. It was like a Basic Instinct moment where Justin like crosses his legs and shows his socks to the world leaders. Why is Turnbull humiliated? I'm humiliated, and I didn't even vote for this guy.
Yes, the Basic Instinct moment, or AKA the reason why I blew out the pause button on my old VCR. But we won't go there. Sheila, I mentioned in the last segment, I'm certainly not a psychiatrist, but what's the deal with the socks? Why is he seemingly obsessed about some haberdashery that basically most of it is covered up by your pants when you're normally walking in the first case? I don't get it. What's your insight into this?
You know what? I think it's because Canada and the Canadian media landscape, save for a few of us, they exist within a bubble. And for Justin Trudeau, I think he consumes a lot of sycophantic news coverage about himself in the Canadian mainstream media, and they are seemingly obsessed with his socks. I've read stories actually about his socks, like 800-word tomes about his socks. And so for Justin Trudeau, I think because he doesn't actually expose himself to all that much criticism. I mean, he bans us from press conferences and debates to prevent himself from being exposed to criticism. So I don't think he understands that the rest of the world could not give a rat's ass about his socks. So he walks in there and he thinks, look at me, I'm the sock prime minister, and shows him off, and everyone's like, yeah, we're here to talk a trade deal, idiot. And I honestly, I blamed the mainstream media for making Justin Trudeau think that people actually care about this stuff. I mean, the mainstream media enabled this disaster at the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
You know, I think you're right about that too, Sheila, and it brings to mind, it was a Maclean's magazine, I think it was the cover story, and I did a commentary on this last year, and it was about Chrystia Freeland's pearls and her stylish tight dresses. And I'm telling you, Sheila, I was wondering, is this Canada's news magazine, or did I just stumble across Penthouse Form? I mean, it was almost as though you could feel the lust of the writer describing the fashion stylings of Minister Freeland. So yeah, they do get a pass, don't they? They do get an easy time. And even in this day and age of the Wuhan virus, when you see journalists at these 11:15 press scrums saying things like, Mr. Prime Minister, are you worried about burnout? Like, really? Are you kidding me? There might be people who are losing their homes or going to food banks, and you're talking about this guy behind closed doors. I would bet, I'll bet you $1 on this, Sheila, that he's got the bong fired up. He is just having the life of Riley there. I mean, like, this is great. You know, it's just like sleeping day every day. And, you know, I don't have to do that messy stuff. What's it called again? Oh, governing, yes. You know, I just hang around and I come out for half an hour and say some things and take some polite questions and go back into my little cottage again. I think you're right. I think when you don't have the media holding people like Justin Trudeau accountable, people might, not realize some of the issues that they should be tuned in. For example, the stuff that you deliver on a weekly basis going through FOIs about really egregious government behavior that people in the mainstream media should be exposing. But then again, Sheila, that might be kind of bad in terms of biting the hand that feeds, those subsidies that the media gets and wants more of. So I guess that is perhaps the answer why you're doing the heavy lifting so often on those files.
Oh, thanks, David.
It's true.
I was just thinking, when Justin Trudeau is performing like this at these major trade deal meetings, it's really, I think, the hand of God at work in our lives that things in this country aren't even worse than they already are. Because we could just be, completely driven over by the Americans, by the Chinese, and to some extent we kind of are with the Chinese. But when this is Justin Trudeau's focus at these trade meetings is his stupid socks. I'm going to thank Jesus as soon as I'm off this live stream for whatever intervention the good Lord has done to prevent Justin Trudeau from damaging this country even worse. Because if we really had an aggressive American president who is hell-bent on just running roughshod over us, and Donald Trump is not, we would be in really bad shape. And we're not. Donald Trump is helping us. He's building pipelines and stuff. So
yeah, I wonder even where those socks are made. But of course, that would probably be deemed an impolite question by members of the media as well. But our trained broadcast professional Mike tells me in my ear that you have some super chats that you must read out, Sheila.
I do. We have one from Proud Boys Calgary. Gives us $2 Canadian. Says, happy 94th birthday to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Yes. Speaking of prayers, keep that woman in your prayers because she must never die. Because the successor to the throne is a bit of a crazy man, and I'm pro-monarchy. I'm conservative. I like the idea of the stability and continuity of the royalty, and I like that they are supposed to be, with some notable exceptions, aloof and sort of beyond politics. I'm not confident that the monarchy can survive her son. I hope it just sort of skips over and goes to Will and Kate. Anyway.
And Sheila, on that point, you can be a monarchist and still criticize elements of the monarchy. I mean, why not? I mean, you can, prop up Queen Elizabeth, but you can, turn a snide eye to the likes of Henry and Meghan, or Harry and Meghan. And, that doesn't mean that you're a traitor. It's just that means you're calling it like you see it, right?
Well, yeah, I want the monarchy to survive. So I want it to skip over Prince Charles entirely and just pretend like he doesn't exist. He can just keep doing whatever sort of busy work he does in a day, and that's fine. Yeah. I would just, that's why I'm pro-monarchy. That's why I want it to just bump over to the good ones. Okay, we've got one from Jeremy Paul, gives us $5 Canadian. Send me money and you both will interact with each other. Cam sites do the same thing. David, I don't know about camera sites. Do you know about webcam sites, camera girls?
Oh,
no. Anyway, let's move along.
Webcam girls.
Data.
Whatever are you talking about, Sheila?
I know, right? Flat Earth Data gives us $2.79 Canadian. Lawsuit Cyrus Parsa versus Google LLC. Report it. I don't know anything about it, but I will look into it. Thank you for letting us know. Annalisa S gives us $13.99 Canadian. Says keep up the great work. You know what? I will, and I bet David will too. Thank you. That's very generous of you. One from Jeremy Paul gives us $2 Canadian. Do you think Trudeau has someone tasked to watch you? Oh, I bet they do. I bet they do. I think it's Media Matters in the United States. I know they used to have a team of people that just watched Sean Hannity and listened to his radio show. And just, that's all they did. There were people paid to watch the most effective critics of Obama or the Clintons or whatever for any step-ups or any sort of things that may be taken out of context. So I'm sure they are doing much the same. But you know what? A hate click is still a click. Proud Boys Calgary gives us $2 Canadian. I thought Freeland was the basic instinctor. Oh my God, poor Kian. Do you remember that? Poor Kian at the airport. I think we had to like digitize or pixelate when she like lifted her leg to put on her running shoes or whatever footwear she was changing out of to take a plane. Poor Kian. I
remember that, Sheila, and I thought we were being extra mean, that was a goof, that was a gag, but no, we had to do that in the name of decency. We were being kind, as it turned out.
You know what, though? Freeland doesn't have a lot of like spatial self-awareness, and I noticed that when I was at the media freedom thing. And look, I'm the last person to criticize someone for their unruly hair. For me, that's part of my charm. But she is up there on stage with like the foreign minister of the UK and foreign diplomats in London, and I'm sitting in the audience, and all of a sudden she like sits on her foot on stage. So she does that like weird, like I'm just casual Freeland, but she's wearing like an above the knee dress. And then she starts putting her hair up in a scrunchie. And this is not your kid's basketball practice. You're on stage with some foreign ministers and diplomats, lady. Get it together. Like,
wow.
It just, she, like I said, she doesn't have any sort of awareness of her body or what it's doing or like things you should do at appropriate times. None of that. It doesn't exist for her. Primpello 8 gives us $5 Canadian. Do you think that Trudeau picks his own socks? Or does he have a team to do that? Priorities, after all.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, I imagine he does have probably one or two people involved in that. I don't know how they make their living in the Prime Minister's office, but you know, I don't know how much of it is an actual honest day's work. We've got one from Hot Soup, $5 Canadian. Trudeau is straight out of a musical. One day he'll break out in song and dance during a press conference. What do you mean one day he will? He broke out into dance in India.
Yeah.
I did that little, I think it's the Bagra. I'm sorry, I don't, but he did a little song and dance, and I did an access to information story on that trip, and I know that they were telling him, don't go dance. Don't go out there and dance. Don't go out there right now. Just don't. And he went out there and did it anyway. So it was he planned it. The people didn't want him to do it, and he did it anyway. So I don't know. What a piece of work. Anyway.
He can't help himself, Sheila.
No, he can't. He knew that there were people out there and he was going to perform for them. You know what? It is like he's in a musical because everything is a performance. Everything is pre-scripted, and he does it for an audience instead of for the benefit of the country.
And yet, wasn't there outrage, and we're going back a couple years ago, but wasn't there outrage about, I think it was a Radio Canada parody of the dancing, and not the actual real Prime Minister doing the dancing, which should have brought the outrage? I mean, so you're not even allowed to parody something that is, I would suggest, almost beyond parody to begin with, right? But again, to go back to your comparison, could you imagine Donald Trump going to India wearing that costume and doing a jig? It is unfathomable.
Well, and you know, Donald Trump does some like culturally appropriate, like outreachy things when he's there. For example, you know, in India and some Middle Eastern cultures, men holding hands is a sign of respect. So you'll see like Trump and Modi walking hand in hand, and it seems a little strange for Westerners, but that's just, you know, like a culturally appropriate thing to do there. That's fine. But jumping out from behind a curtain and dancing around like a crazy person after your staff have told you, don't do this. The Indians are kind of sick of you by now. He did it anyway. And the Indians were sick of him. And, and I say jumping around like a crazy person, not to be disrespectful of the dance. I'm saying you have to be crazy to ignore your handlers and jump out from behind a curtain and dance on stage when you're the Prime Minister of Canada. The Indians at that point had been saying to the media, Justin Trudeau is more Bollywood than Bollywood. Like, he was meeting with Bollywood stars, and they're wearing suits and ties and like appropriate, like the ladies are wearing appropriate dresses, and he and his wife saunter up wearing Bollywood costumes, and they're like, who is this guy? No, like, this is getting old.
You're right, Sheila. It would be like somebody from India doing a diplomatic visit of Canada, and they wore a Mountie costume. It would be like just jaw-dropping to see that. But you raise a good point, though. That whole, in some cultures, that sign of respect of a man and man walking hand in hand, and it has nothing to do with any kind of romantic intentions. It's a sign of respect, as you say. But I wonder, when we're past the Wuhan virus, when things get back to normal and, pick a month and put it on a spinning wheel. Who knows when that's going to happen? I just wonder if certain customs are going to die. Listen, I'm never one to hold another man's hand. I barely hold my wife's hand, for goodness sakes. But what about the handshake? What's that?
We had this conversation about holding hands once.
Oh, we did? Okay, then. And but I mean, what about the handshake, Sheila? Because I would surely love to appropriate from Japanese culture the very dignified, bow when you encounter another individual. I'm not one that's big on somebody that's got a sweaty hand, and I know we've talked about this before, or those guys, and you know who I'm talking about, who think you're on the World's Strongest Man show, and you feel that you must break one of my fingers and one of the bones in my fingers. I mean, I am happy to see the handshake go the way of the Edsel, Sheila. What about you?
It depends on the day. For example, if I'm not a feminist. That's the last thing I am. But when I'm shaking your hand, don't grab my hand like the fingertips. Like, how some men like grab a lady's fingertips and because they don't want to they think I'm too dainty to give you a good one, and it's like I've been packing water and throwing bales all day. I can shake your hand, right? But they'll grab the end, and it's just hold your hand like that. I hate that. I hate it. So if someone shook my hand that way, that makes it just grosses me out. But I don't know. I kind of like the handshake.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a traditionalist. I know you're turning into a germaphobe all that time at the airport, but I kind of like a handshake, and I like to show people that I'm stronger than them.
Well, and I would suggest, you probably are. But speaking of the Wuhan virus, Sheila, a story that caught my eye today in the Sun. It was very interesting. There was the other day a little parade down University Avenue here in Toronto, Hospital Row, if you will. A lot of the big hospitals are there, like Mount Sinai, Sick Kids, and so on. And there was, there was members of law enforcement, members of the firefighters, but people came out too. And one of the people that was part of this thing was Mayor John Tory. And I'm looking at the photos that were taken, and I'm going, wait a minute. Is this the same Mayor John Tory who just, 8 or 9 days ago was on Twitter bragging about how many $880 fines were issued to citizens for doing things like jogging through a park and doing chin-ups on a set of monkey bars or what have you? And here we have people congregate. Now, I get it. The thought was there. They want to salute the emergency responders in the hospitals. That's all sweet and everything. But I'm just shocked, Sheila, of elected officials like Mayor Tory, who people continually tell me is very smart and he's got a big heart. But I'm shocked at how tone deaf they are when they tell us to live our lives a certain way, or else, and the or else is almost $1,000 being taken out of our pockets. And meanwhile, he puts on a parade? I mean, I think this is just grotesque.
Well, it's not just a parade, and it's not just tickets. The tickets are bad enough that you have cops out there patrolling for rollerblading families. I mean, who signed up to be a cop to do that? But he also has a snitch line, so you can turn in your neighbors you don't like, and they might be out having a barbecue or walking on the same side of the street as the other neighbors, and you've got a personal vendetta against them. Well, guess what? The municipality just gave you an opportunity to even the score, and you can turn in your neighbors. I mean, it is gross. I'd like to see people snitching on John Tory for that photo. I mean, he's given us photographic evidence. He's violating his own, social distancing guidelines. Let's see if the rules apply to him. As much as I despise those rules, do they apply to him? Will the police treat him the same as they treat some rollerblading dad? I bet they don't.
Oh, Sheila, I can tell you with authority you're going to win that bet. Maybe Mr. Producer can cue up the report I did last week when I went to the Willowdale Welcome House. That's the name of the defunct North York Hydro building that is housing refugees. And it was incredible because this is a city-run facility with taxpayer dollars, and basically all the COVID-19 rules were being broken, from the social distancing to the lack of personal protection equipment to the fact that potentially infected people were coming and going. And when the police showed up to give me the bum's rush, because evidently it's more egregious in Canada these days to practice journalism than to, have a facility that is an incubator for the Wuhan virus. Well, when I pointed out to the police constable that he could basically fill his monthly quota of tickets by just walking into that building, he told me to go to Health Canada and file a complaint. And the supervisor, who was a really nice guy,
Canada,
I might add.
Go to hell. I thought you were going to say go to hell.
He told me to go to Toronto Public Health. And over the weekend, I contacted those authorities, amongst others, including Mayor Tory's office, and it's been radio silence. So on the one hand, you're right. Snitch on your neighbor, snitch on a stranger, get him dinged with an $880 fine. And yet, this is probably the most egregious, outside of, elder care facilities, example of Wuhan virus taking root. And get a load of this, Sheila, when I reported that story last week, it was 11 refugees and 12 staff. Now it is 74 refugees have tested positive. And I know the local councillor, he's asking for this to be locked down, but no, I guess that would be culturally insensitive. Again, it's the double standard out there of do as I say, not as I do. And if you don't do as I say, we're going to financially devastate you.
Yeah. I mean, each one of those people in there is violating, the law to get into the country, and secondarily, John Tory's quarantine orders, and yet they'll call the cops on you for showing up to just tell the public what's going on. We've got so many super chats because we have the best, most generous viewers in the world. Also, I forget every time that we're on air, but I should remind everybody to make sure that they like the video, that they're subscribed to our YouTube channel, and to ring the bell to make sure that they never miss a story from us. Ring the little bell, as they say. Okay, we've got one from Jean McLeod. Gives us $5 Canadian. Says, been reading articles reporting COVID-19 is less deadly than the flu and or flus. Antibody tests are showing more people had it with no symptoms. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case, that more people were exposed and did not show symptoms, much like the flu. And the reason I say that is I think that this thing has been a problem for much longer than the Chinese have told us it's a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
Just with the amount of travel that came out of Wuhan in the weeks before, I think this has been a problem in parts of the world for a lot longer than our governments and the Chinese are willing to admit. We've got one from Paul Schofield. gives us $5 Canadian. Easy to explain. Socks, sock puppet, Trudeau. Exactly. Flat Earth Data is $6.99. 3,700 people a day are killed by car accident. More dangerous than COVID-19. Yeah, and deer are pretty dangerous as far as animals go. We've got one from Joey Sharp, $10 Canadian. No super chat, but I appreciate your generosity, Joey. Oscar Lance, $20 Canadian. You are amazing. I'm going to guess that Oscar's using the plural you and not just directing that at me. We've got one from Anthony Julke, $5 Canadian. How are we going to stop the Liberal gun grab? Seriously concerned. Where's your opposition party? Where's the opposition party right now? I mean, I'm going through these. We talked about it in our morning meeting, and I don't think I'm revealing anything in confidence. But I'm going through these health committee documents. So these are documents presented by Public Safety Canada, Foreign Affairs Canada to the Health Committee, and the Health Committee is investigating how COVID-19 became this thing that is shutting down our economy and the decisions that were made in the lead up. And these documents are presented to the Health Committee, which is stacked with opposition party members. They were presented a month ago. They're public now. I'm going through them. A, why isn't anybody else in the media going through them? And B, why hasn't the opposition been making hay of this stuff for a month now? Why am I the only one reporting that we were confident in China's ability to contain the spread, and we were thanking them repeatedly for their transparency? Like David, like you were about to say, it's crazy.
I have no answer for you, Sheila. I mean, it's not as though the Conservatives have skin in the game, is it? I mean, you know, the idea of calling foul on the government and exposing this so that they can morph from opposition to the government in the next election. You think that would be motivation for an opposition party to raise a red flag? I am baffled by this, Sheila.
Well, and, you know, you see the questions that the media are hammering Andrew Scheer with. They're holding the opposition to account on behalf of the government, which is literally the opposite of what they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. So what does Andrew Scheer have to lose? What do the Conservatives have to lose? Oh, the media won't like you? Yeah, they hate you. They hate you anyway. You know, they should be treating the media the way Trump treats the media, like 100%. An enemy of themselves and the people, and they don't for some reason, even when CBC is a nuisance plaintiff against them. But yeah, if you're concerned about the gun grab, you better ask where your pro-gun advocates in the Conservative Party of Canada are, because they're not saying much right now. We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary, $2 Canadian. Sheila is more of a hugger than a handshaker. That is true. I am, I'm a little germ spreader. I like to hug you. Bring it in nice and close and tight, and maybe rock back and forth a little bit.
Wow. David, I'll make a note of that.
You know that. You know that. We've got one from Fraser McBurney for $1 Canadian. I don't see a super chat, but Fraser, thank you. Every little bit counts. Chris Legg, $10 Canadian. No super chat. Again, thank you very much. Lamont Boucherville, $20 Canadian. I wonder if we will ever get our new fighter jets. Come on. The CBC are the liberal light. You know, I think there are a lot of blue Tories still in that Conservative Party, but they need to find their voices and speak up, and they need to actually learn something from their own mistakes, which I'm not seeing very much of. But yeah, with regard to the fighter jets, no. By the time the world has moved on from the F-35, we'll be buying the junked F-35s and then Frankensteining them together, like a meth head tries to put a toaster together with a microwave to make some incredible appliance. That's what the Canadian government is going to try to do with the F-35 when the world is moving on to the next most amazing fighter jet.
Or they'll go on to the UK Craigslist and look for some used submarines, hardly driven by a little old lady on Sundays. You got a few $billion for those. Remember how that turned out in the 90s, Sheila?
Just drove them to church. Yeah. Buying submarines with screen doors. Okay. One from Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish the super chats, please.
Oh, I'll never finish them. We've got one from Annalisa S. $13.99 Canadian. All I can say is thanks for giving me a visual of Freeland's muff.
Censored.
I wish I took a minute to read these before I said them on air, but I said it, so here we are. So much for my delicious coffee I was enjoying. Sorry, Annalisa. You know who we should be, Kian's got to live with that every day. You just got the pixelated version, but that's haunting Kian. We've got one from Vito Anthony D, $5 Canadian. No super chat. Chris Legg, $2 Canadian. Again, no super chat. And Primpal08, $5 Canadian. Saw a report today from the University of Southern California saying the fatality rate, including those over 80 with pre-existing conditions, is 0.1% to 0.26%. That also wouldn't surprise me. We've got one from Gabriel Mullet, $5 Canadian. How far away are we just from banning guns as an excuse for public safety? I would suggest that argument is hanging out there in the Liberal Party. And if you look at Adam Vaughan, Liberal MP, slight lunatic from Toronto, he was a city councillor in Toronto, was he not, David?
Yes, he was.
Okay, so he sort of oversaw this explosion of gun crime in Toronto, didn't do much about it, was an advocate for repealing carding, which is a great tool to help police gather intel on gang members and their known associates. And after that was sort of done away with, then, gang violence exploded. And instead of actually dealing with the conditions that created gang violence in Toronto, it's pretty easy to come after law-abiding sport shooters, duck hunters, and predator controllers out here in the rest of the world instead of, fixing the mess he made in Toronto.
Oh, and I believe Mr. Vaughan was part of the cabal that went after getting rid of gun clubs. There was one at the University of Toronto. Yes. That's gone. There was one at Union Station. That's gone. So, that was his war on crime, going after sport shooters, shooting at targets, as opposed to going after the gangbangers that were actually shooting at people who the cops arrest and they go into a revolving door and get back out on probation or bail just like that. So, that's the Adam Vaughan story.
Yeah, and it's easier than ever to get back out of jail because of the coronavirus. They're paroling hundreds of people out of federal prisons.
Unbelievable.
And releasing a lot of people who are awaiting their hearings on their own recognizance. So as they say, ROR, I don't know what they call it in Ontario, probably the same thing, release on their own recognizance to go about their business and be law-abiding people that they never were because
what
of
could
the coronavirus.
Go wrong?
So what could possibly go wrong? So we're all locked up in our houses and we're releasing on house arrest, and we're releasing criminals out onto the street in the name of public health. Isn't Canada a wonderful place?
And you know what, Sheila? I got to add in here that while we're locked in our houses, we're getting some very interesting content sent our way by the internet. And you sent along a gem to me that there's so many angles to this. It was slugged Farm Girls 2020. And at first I thought that was one of those services where I have to pay $4.99 a minute, but which I don't use, of course.
Webcam girl.
But this is... I don't know if Mr. Producer has it queued up, but he's got the thumbs up. I'm going to stop talking and let this lady do the talking.
That men are no longer going to be interested in the woman with the fake nails because we don't have them anymore. The eyelash extensions, we can't get them. I'm going to run out of makeup soon. Men are going to want the woman who can catch a chicken and take the feathers off of it, or gut a fish, or churn some butter, or whip up some toilet paper, spin it somehow. I can't do any of it. 2020 is your year, Farm Girls. 2020 is for you. I don't know what I'm going to do.
That's so fantastic. Sheila, first of all, I know I'm going to sound greedy here, but can't we have both? Can't you have the nice hair and the nice fingernails and also, what did she call it? Whip up some toilet paper? How do you do that? How do you manufacture toilet paper at your household? But you know, it kind of reminds me, she might be onto something. In the early 90s, and I was working at an office environment in trade publishing, and there was a survey that came out, I'm going by memory, and it was asking men what they would choose as a life mate. Julia Child, one of the best chefs on the planet, or Pamela Anderson, and this is early 90s Pamela Anderson, perhaps one of the most beautiful women on the planet. And incredibly, the majority of men went with Julia Child, I guess, you know, proving the adage, a way to a man's heart is through his stomach. And I was put on the spot by a female colleague. She said, how would you vote, David, right? And I said, I got to be honest, I'm going with Pamela Anderson. And she said, oh, yes, why? And I said, well, let's put it this way. You can always teach Pamela Anderson how to cook, right? So, anyways, what's your take on this, Sheila?
My take is that you would be regretting choosing Pamela Anderson at this point in your life because she is a vegan now.
Yes.
She's vegan. So you would be stuck with this aging lump of silicone eating raw vegetables all day. And I'm sure Pamela is a very nice lady, but I think that men appreciate a decent dinner. I saw a similar study where it was like ranking like the smells that men like, and it was like the kinds of perfume and stuff. And it was always like vanilla or pumpkin spice or like the food smells that were high on the list, because I think men do appreciate food. So I'm not surprised actually by that, like where Pamela Anderson would lose that contest with Julia Child. However, Julia Child's voice would get to me after a while. But yeah,
but you know what, Sheila?
Video of the farm girls, I love it because I feel like my stock price is going up these days.
Oh, for sure. And you know, here's the thing, and I think women don't give men enough credit in terms of us being so superficial, because I'm going to bring it down to the age-old query for the ages, which is Ginger or Marianne. Of course, I'm talking about Gilligan's Island fame. And I can tell you, and I've done this experiment myself, if you ask a woman who she thinks a guy would choose to be with, 9 out of 10 are going to say Ginger. But if you ask a guy that same question, 9 out of 10 take Marianne. There's something about, you know, that wholesome, you know, I don't know, Marianne looks like the kind of gal that could whip up a great meal. On the flip side, Ginger looks so high maintenance, you know, and I'll leave it to our viewers. You answer the question, Ginger or Marianne? I bet you Marianne wins in a landslide. What do you think about that, Sheila Gunn-Reid?
I think that half of our viewers were born before Gilligan's Island was a thing.
There's reruns. Come on.
Where? I suppose,
come on.
You know, it's like Betty or Veronica, right? Do you want the high maintenance, like uppity, snobby, beautiful girl, or like the regular girl? I don't know. I suppose it depends on the guy. It depends on the guy. It's all a personal thing, but I'm really excited that somebody like me, who has gotten by on charm, intelligence, and wit and hard work my entire life, all of a sudden is a hot commodity in the world. Because
but no, here's the thing, Sheila. This is what you don't understand. Wait a second. This is what you don't understand. You were always that hot commodity. There was always this appreciation for women like you. Are we? I think Mr. Producer is holding up the Rebel Human Resources guidebook. We better drop this discussion right now. But we have more super chats, I understand.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Okay, one from Jeremy Paul, who needs better glasses, says, Sheila, you're hot. Don't tell my wife. I won't. You just did. We've got one from Abu Baker, Al Puff Daddy, says $50 Canadian. Again, Abu Baker, you're very generous every single day. Sheila and David, other than Terry Fox, who do you think we should Who do you think should be on the new $5 bill? I think it should be Dr. Banting, World War I veteran, who discovered insulin, didn't put a patent on it, foregoing money so people could get cheap access to this medicine. It's hard to top that one, actually. I think Francis, how do I say his last name? Pegamagabo. He was a First Nations World War I sniper. He was decorated for bravery over and over again, and he had the Victory Medal, British War Medal, the most deadly sniper in the Canadian military, and he died nearly indigent because of alcoholism and I guess to some extent racism. But
good choices.
Abu Baker, I like yours.
Mine, Sheila, would be just to see the left collectively go into cardiac arrest. I would like to see Don Cherry on that bill.
Yes. 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 Voice of North America gives us $10 Canadian. Both Trudeau and Trump should listen to JFK's 1961 address speech to Canadian Parliament to stop their under-the-table Cold War they've had going. There's definitely a failure to communicate. Possibly. David Dimovsky, sorry, I could be saying your name wrong. $10 Canadian. How, to your opinion, is recent oil price drop impacting Alberta's and Canadian economies? It's going to be catastrophic, coupled with the shutdown and then oil price futures at negative. How do you budget? How do you do anything? How not only that, but how do you budget when you don't have people going to work because projects are not going forward because we're literally paying, or we will be paying people, these are futures prices, to take our oil. There's no income tax now. There's no tax base because everything has completely collapsed.
Sheila, I can't get my head around this. How can, and I heard this story yesterday, oil prices at a negative. How is that possible?
It is. These are futures trading prices, so it's not the actual price today.
Yes.
So, I mean, these are the things, though, that companies base their future projects on and next year's budget. So you can just basically write off the next year because it doesn't exist. We're not going to pay drilling crews. And just to move a drilling rig onto a pad is, $100,000. And then to the equipment to run it, to drill the hole. Hopefully it's not a duster. We don't hit many of those anymore because of great geologists. But I mean, it is like millions of dollars just to even contemplate one drilling, one attempt at drilling. That's just not going to happen next year. There's nothing.
But this government has its priorities straight when it comes to the oil patch. We're going to clean up those orphan wells, right?
Clean up those orphan wells, yeah. Yeah, I've never heard of anything so stupid in my life. And, we already have an orphan well fund in Alberta. So it's like, hey, they've got an orphan well fund. We're going to clean up we're going to pay guys to clean up orphan wells. How does that pay the bills? How does that get royalties in the pocket of the government to keep the hospitals open? That does nothing.
Unbelievable.
You got one. Gary Warner, $5 Canadian, no super chat. One from Vito Anthony D, $2, no super chat. And Valerie Demers, $5 Canadian, no super chat. And we are at the 2-minute warning, David.
Yes, the 2-minute warning. So I think we covered a lot of territory, some of it tragic, some of it humorous. And I imagine, as we always say to our viewers during these terrible times, Sheila, I think it's always important to live by the philosophy of don't get stressed out by things beyond your control. Right now, at least as far as the little guy and gal on the ground is concerned, this is out of our control. I would love to see our political leaders embrace what some of the states are doing in terms of a yellow light opening of the economy. You're mentioning the statistics for who's actually dying and where in terms of the Wuhan virus. And I think this lockdown has gone on far enough. We now have a better grasp of the knowledge. We now know what the data is as opposed to these models that were always predicting worst case scenarios. But I think, you know, it starts at the top, and that's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Sheila. And, you know, I'm telling you, I think he's digging this lifestyle, you know, sleeping in, you know, just doing an hour with the press and then going back to bed again. I don't think he has any drive or ambition to get this country rolling, even on a yellow light basis.
No, of course he doesn't. You know, you look at the United States, you look at, you know, the governors in the states, and even Trump, they're making progress. They're desperate to move towards reopening the economy. They're getting this pressure from the people, and they are, unlike Trudeau, responding to the pressure of the people to reopen the economy. For Justin Trudeau, he's actually taking steps to move in the opposite direction. Like, he wants Parliament to work less. He wants himself to work less. He wants further restrictions. He's saying that it's going to be longer than we could even imagine. He can't even give us really a timeline about reopening or even just easing the restrictions on people, because this is perfect for him.
Yep.
Throw money at a problem and not govern.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's what he always wanted to do. We have we're at 11 o'clock, and we have one last super chat. It is from, oh my God, you guys with your names. Cost humongous. Gives us $2, £2, UK pounds. Says, hi, Sheila and David, love your work. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Love your name.
And you know, and folks, as Sheila often says, this is the fastest hour online. I have so much fun conversing with Sheila and reading and hearing your super chats. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And I especially want to thank those in these difficult times that have a few bucks to kick our way. We so appreciate that. So on behalf of Sheila Gunn-Reid, until next time, everybody stay safe. See you again on Thursday.